My name's Matthew Schofield. I did a Bachelor of Visual Arts degree at Griffith, and now I'm working as the Supervising Storyboard Director on The Simpsons. I've been working for Film Roman for about the last 14 years. I've started off as a character layout artist, became an assistant director, became a director, and now I'm Supervising Storyboard Director. Film Roman is the animation studio in the United States that handles the storyboards, the designs, the character layouts for the show. Just after I finished at Griffith, I went down to Sydney, got a job at a small commercial studio. I made contacts in LA, and about a year later, I found myself with my first job in the American animation industry. I worked on Quest for Camelot and Iron Giant for Warner Brothers, and I worked on Prince of Egypt for DreamWorks, and then I started on The Simpsons. What I love about my job is I get to influence the course of my favourite animated show. I've loved The Simpsons since I was a college student at Griffith. To be able to watch an episode of the show and see my name on the front of the show in the credits, that was just like a dream come true for me. When I first started college at Griffith, I really wanted to draw comics for a living. And it wasn't until my fourth year of the animation course that I really clicked into the art that goes into making animation and the performance you can bring out it's just drawings on paper, and you're giving it life, and you are affecting the audience's emotions with what is essentially a two-dimensional drawing, or in the case of CG these days, it's just a bunch of pixels on a screen. It doesn't exist anywhere else but in the audience's imagination, and so that just became really exciting to me. And so then I sort of veered over towards wanting to be an animator and work in the animation industry. I got my first job in LA through a contact I made in Sydney. When I was working in Sydney, my first boss was actually an American who said he could put in a good word for me with people in the studios over here, which he did. I sent my portfolio over, so I think my portfolio combined with the recommendation gave me my first break over here, and so that's how I first got over here. I think one major turning point in my career was the decision to move out of working on feature films and try TV. After Iron Giant ended, I sort of decided, I think I might like to try TV animation and see what that's like, just in the hopes of getting a more well-rounded resume, really. And I happened to know a guy who was working on The Simpsons at the time, and he helped me learn how to draw the characters, and I submitted my portfolio and I did a layout test and got the job. So that was really the major turning point in my career, because my time on The Simpsons has been so long and such a happy one, and I've been fortunate enough to have a measure of success at it. So the typical process of producing an episode of The Simpsons is the writers will write a script for an episode. We at Film Roman get that script. We then produce the storyboards, the designs, all the basic artistic material that you need for one episode. Character layout is done, which is a rough form of the animation, and then that's sent to Korea, where the nuts and bolts of the animation is done, and then we get all that back and we see that on screen. That's what you see on screen. In what I do on The Simpsons day to day, pretty much 95% is done on computer. Now it's still drawn by hand. We use a Cintiq monitor, we use Toon Boom software to do the storyboards, to do the layouts, but we're still drawing by hand. We're just drawing onto a computer, drawing directly into the computer. We'll still do thumbnails for storyboards on paper or on post-it notes. Love post-it notes. Yeah, quite a lot of what we do now is aided by computer technology. One thing in particular that I've learned and improved at since working in LA is I now feel like I can draw anything, because on The Simpsons, you never know what you're going to be drawing from day to day, from week to week. My first couple of scenes on The Simpsons involved Homer and a Bikie having a fencing match using motorcycles. So that was pretty crazy to have to draw having just started. I'd never drawn a motorcycle before, and I was expected to animate these guys picking up motorcycles and bashing them against each other. So you just never know what you're going to be called on to draw, and it really pushes you to go back to your lessons, your drawing lessons, and just be like, just break it down into the shapes and the forms and draw the forms and then build on that. So that's what I've learned. One of the biggest challenges we faced in recent memory was after the Simpsons movie came out, which was on a big screen, super amounts of detail, much more colourful than you'd ever seen the show before. We then wanted to put that amount of detail into each episode of the show. So there was a learning curve for us, but we quickly mastered that and made it, I think, look better than it's ever looked before. I had the goal of directing on The Simpsons for a long time, and I've achieved that goal now. So now I have to think of what I do want to do next. I really like the job that I'm doing now, but as for what happens after The Simpsons eventually ends, and fingers crossed it never will, but I'd like to maybe work in feature films again. I'd like to keep directing, maybe direct a feature film. I don't know, maybe that's too presumptuous, but you got to aim high to rise, you know. My heroes when I was a kid were probably all from the world of comics. Comic book artists, John Byrne, Arthur Adams. It wasn't until I started at QCA that I started to learn the names of the animators who had animated all these memorable scenes in these well-known films. Aladdin, Lion King. So people like Glenn Keane and Andreas Deja, as well as the original Walt Disney animators, Milt Kahl, Ollie Johnston, Frank Thomas. They were all real inspirations to me. But that didn't really happen until I was studying animation at QCA. I think the major change in what the young guys coming into the industry today, what's different about what they're taught as opposed to what I was taught is the computer aspect, obviously. Well, I'm pretty old, so we were only just starting to be exposed to computer animation back then. Toy Story came out in my last year of college, so it really was just this niche thing. So that's the main difference that I think guys coming into the industry today have to what I learned was all these software packages, you know, there's a different software package for almost every aspect of putting an animated film together now. If I had to predict where animation was going to go over the next 4 or 5 years, I would say that the future's pretty bright. I think that with the advent of digital streaming technology, there's just more and more avenues for getting animation and animated content out to prospective audiences. And so I think the future for animation, to me, seems better than ever. To someone who's just finished high school and is just about to start at QCA, I would say good luck, have fun, keep your eyes and ears open and just absorb as much as you can and really use your time at QCA to improve as much as you can, because that's one thing I'm really grateful to my time at QCA for, was just giving me the time to purely focus on what it was I wanted to do as a career. Like I could really practice drawing. I was such a better artist when I came out of QCA 3 or 4 years later than I was when I started.